Hello. Thank you that some people showed up at this horrible hour of day. As we were already introduced, our session is about the representation of secret services in popular culture. My name is Theresia Reinhold. I'm a historian, filmmaker and journalist, and a pop culture geek.
And my name is Laura Ede. I studied sociology and history, and currently working on my master thesis, and time by time as a journalist.
So what you're about to listen to and see started out of as a fun project, but it turned into pretty serious research over the last months, and we would also like to pursue that on an academic level. So in case someone has money or time, let us know. I give you a short walkthrough at first, what we are talking about. So first we will give you a little video, then a short theoretical input about the topic, what is pop culture. Then Laura will present you the analysis, and we will give you a short example, and that will be it, because then we already reached the conclusion.
Yes.
But first, something for fun, the video.
Yep.
Cell phones off! Everybody turn off your cell phones! They can track the signals.
What, like spying? Like spying on American citizens here at home?
No, I'm not talking anymore, because who knows who's listening.
Who do you think's listening? Oh, no, we don't randomly listen to conversations and phone calls.
They secretly monitor all kinds of communication, including the phone calls of American citizens.
I've seen it all.
The intrusive state machine. Big Brother.
I can see you, and I can use what I see.
White House.
West Wing, 20 feet from the Oval Office.
Nobody's safe.
The entire UK are one database. Birth to death, day to day, up to date, and in real time.
I got an email today from a hacker. I'm pretty sure it was anyway. It was encrypted.
Germany's doing an end run around its privacy laws by having the US do the spying for them.
Absolute surveillance.
Yeah, with encryption that guarantees only the right people have it.
But I have an even bigger gun. It's called the NSA. It's one of the perks of being president. That is, if the courts allow my surveillance request.
But there are people in the NSA who want us to be better.
Worried about the next Snowden.
She took what Snowden did and went 10 steps beyond.
Yeah, that bastard Snowden. The public doesn't get why it's necessary.
I miss the old days before Edward Snowden and zombies. They were such badasses.
I'm here to photograph Mr. Snowden.
So he doesn't want to end up in exile like Snowden.
And 2 seats across the aisle from Edward Snowden. You know where he is?
Bad day for the NSA.
And it intercepts 1.7 billion phone calls, emails, and texts every day.
Legally?
No.
It's a 3-hop warrant.
A 3-hop? So it's not just us. It's anyone we talk to and anyone they talk to?
The NSA has been happily violating the Fourth Amendment, USS ID 18, and about a dozen of the NSA's own regulations about spying on Americans.
Well, I figured NSA and all, you wouldn't want to talk about this over the phone.
This is Citizen Z broadcasting live via broadband, low band, VHF, UHF, Skynet. If you can get a signal, then you can find me, thanks to our friends at the NSA.
Everyone has a file. The more we pay attention to them, the bigger their file becomes.
Title 18, 641, Title 18, 793-E, 18, 1030A, and you violated the USA Patriot Act.
It seems like the US government has an awful lot of laws protecting itself from its citizens.
Oh, well, that's one way of looking at it.
So you might consider this something of a lesson. If you keep a discrete digital footprint, as I do, you're less vulnerable to the harassment which is everyone's stock in trade.
U.S. Secret Service, hands in the air.
What's this about?
You seriously think we can't trace a blog back to an IP address?
There's 300 million people out there. How do you think we're able to keep track of every single person in the country?
Dude.
This is how we know who's a threat and who's not.
Thank you.
I hope you have enjoyed it.
So, before, as I said, we dig into the analysis, there will be a little bit of theory for you. The question is, what is pop culture? Popular culture has been defined in a variety of ways over the last 200 years. Writers, scholars, philosophers, and very well-known ones, such as Pierre Bourdieu, Umberto Eco, Stuart Hall, etc., thought about this issue. But what they found out is that popular culture, as everything else, depends highly on political, economical, and social change. So, since the upcoming of the mass media in the 19th century, it was massively influenced by globalization, the growth of cities, and industrialization. But what becomes really obvious when you read those books and essays on a topic is that popular culture is very hard to define. It actually is easier to define what it is not. So, popular culture generally is used to describe the opposite of so-called high-class culture or legitimate culture. But as we will see, and as probably some of us already know, is that popular culture is not a form of subculture, nor is it a working class culture. So, to dig a bit further, Pierre Bourdieu conducted empirical studies on consumerism, and he defined 3 different kinds of tastes, which can be read as the equivalent of 3 different kinds of culture. I give you a short walkthrough of that, which is usually a really massive book, so if you're interested, I really recommend reading it. The first taste he defined is the so-called legitimate taste. Legitimate taste is respected as such by the public, and it is very elitist and usually consumed by people in power and charge. Because it requires an understanding of certain codes, which means that you need a certain education and a background to really understand what is going on stage or in the book or whatever you are consuming. This form of culture is usually not connected to daily life, so it barely will represent anything that you are going through, but it works massively around and through aesthetics, so it's more about the form than the content. The second form described by Bourdieu is the so-called middle taste. Middle taste are basically lesser forms of high culture, or lesser products of high culture, that trickle down into the broader public. That means they became very well known, very broadly received, and kind of imitate forms of legitimate culture in the first place. Those works, thereby, lose their socio-economic worth and the status of being forms of legitimate culture. And the third form described by Bourdieu, of course, is pop culture. Pop culture is usually connected to daily life, is very easy to consume, and you don't need a certain knowledge or any education to understand the codes that are used in it. But also popular culture is, of course, used as a synonym of mass culture, which is absolutely correct if we think about it, because popular culture is produced to generate money, meaning it wants to reach a very, very broad audience and not being confined to classes or certain groups of people. Of course, we have to keep in mind that there are no inherently strict borders between those 3 kinds of culture, because the reception of products changed, the audience has changed over the years, and products of a certain kind of culture can flow between or belong to more than one of them. And of course, they also influence each other, as we can see in this picture. So, one example for this might be House of Cards. I assume a lot of people watched it or heard about it. So House of Cards generally, of course, deals with the political system in the US, which would put it into the high or legitimate form of culture, because to understand it, you have, in a way, to understand the history of the US and how the political system generally works. But as it is broadly received and watched by so many people, Bourdieu could argue that it would belong to the middle taste, because it's kind of not really elitist anymore. At the same time, it uses a form, namely TV shows and cliffhangers and drama and love interest and murder, etc., that would absolutely were perceived in the late 80s and early 90s as popular culture. Other examples could be Star Wars, The Simpsons, South Park, Homeland, Jessica Jones, and a lot of the very modern shows presented and shown on TV or Netflix. But popular culture, even though it's a quite fluffy term, should never be underestimated. Because when it comes to collective memory and myths, popular culture has a massive influence on those. Because collective memory, which sounds like a really, really abstract term, is not academic, elitist, or scientific at all. It is basically shaped by the reoccurring representation of a topic. So if I talk about something in a certain way, and that gets, picked up by someone else and represented exactly the same way, and that goes on and on through mass culture for years and years on end, people will start to believe that. And kind of, gets into your mind, and it doesn't really matter whether it's what you claim or what you say is based on a factual truth. So mass media plays a crucial role in the formation of collective memory, and they kind of shape reality by creating it themselves. So, of course, as we experienced and as we analyzed, is that popular culture and mass media change our perception of secret services. So we based our analysis, because we needed a starting point, on TV shows mainly from the US. And Laura now will present to you the analysis of what we did.
Yes. So I will show a little bit of data, not that big data. But, well, until now, our research material includes 34 TV shows in total. It seemed to be useful, as we go through it, to classify them in 3 categories. You see them there. We have the first one. There are TV shows with surveillance and the work of secret services, especially as a topic, and especially the NSA as a main topic. And there are 21 in this category. Then we got category 2. These are shows in which surveillance is not the main topic, but occurred in some episodes or seasons, included 11 shows. And at last, we got 2 shows, both from 2015, where the NSA is featured as a kind of linguistic code for surveillance. Now, if we put all these 34 TV shows in the timeline, as you can see, we did it here. The white points are from category 1. The black points are from category 2. And we differ between mostly negative and positive representation of surveillance in secret services. And you can see clearly that it changed. During the 90s and the first years of the new millennium, you see that the topic was often presented in positive context. But in the following years, they nearly swept, especially after 2013, you may guess why. The positive representations of surveillance nearly disappeared. By this, we can suppose that the Snowden scandal has a sustainable influence on the representation of surveillance and secret services, in particular the NSA, in TV shows. Now we want to share with you a deeper look into the items of category 2. We think that these shows, where surveillance isn't the main topic, are highly interesting, because in this way, even people who are not interested in surveillance and secret services, not even in pop cultural context, are reached. By this, TV shows become sources of information, if these are fictional or real, and influence the opinions of the consumers. So, we have these 11 shows, and we found 28 episodes which deal with surveillance. Apparently, they are all from the US, so if anybody knows a good example from another country, please let us know via Theresia's Twitter account, because we are still looking and still working on this research. These shows are in 4 different genres. 2 in animation, satire TV shows like South Park or American Dad. 3 in crime shows. 5 in surprise political dramas. And even 1 in a horror show, in a zombie show called Z Nation. They all aired from the first time on TV for the first time on TV between 2012 and 2016. And we found that at 9 times the NSA monitors the people, and 2 times the CIA, and 2 times other US institutions like the Secret Services. And an additional 2 times the Secret Services of other countries, namely the German BND and the Russian SWR, are monitoring the people. When we ask who is the object of the surveillance, we saw that in 9 cases, potentially everybody is tapped. On 5 shows, especially the US citizens. In 1 show, the German citizens, and at last in 1 show, a US law firm. The reasons for the surveillance are, as usual, the security of the nation and the war on terrorism. We found in these shows that there are groups which are frequently referred on this topic. So now we want to take a look at these actors in the drama of surveillance. First, we'll focus on the NSA. Especially in the representation of the NSA, we can see many changes. Even the pop culture picture of the NSA headquarters had changed. In this picture from 2003, we see an old neoclassical building in the middle of a town, surrounded by trees. Looks pretty nice. Today, in TV shows from after 2013, the headquarters appears as futuristic complexes that are more or less exactly looking like the real crypto city. Also, the workplaces inside the NSA buildings look different. Here, another picture from 2003. It looks like a tactical center that reminds me on the NASA. And this have changed to this. The offices we can see here look more or less like internet startups, or on the other side, like big bureaucratic head offices. But the most dramatically changed figure are the NSA agents themselves. In 2007, they are still portrayed as typical agents, tough guys in black suits with big guns. Since 2013, the NSA analysts captured the stage. They appear mostly as skinny, harmless, and a bit chaotic individuals who are often a little bit childish, but also highly intelligent. Their bosses, you can see it in the picture there a little bit, are either described as immoral monsters or elderly bureaucrats in bad-fitting suits. The NSA itself is shown as a paranoid organization which suspects even their own people and constantly controls them, for example, via polygraph examinations and drug tests. We have also found other agencies represented. Mostly we have the FBI, the CIA, the Secret Service, and so on. And they are mostly shown as ambassadors of the same cliché figure as a former NSA agent: sweets, guns, and sunglasses. So we thought it's better to show this to you. In shows where NSA officials and other agencies appear, they are mostly shown in a good cop, bad cop scheme, where the NSA plays the part of the bad cop. Non-US agencies are only presented in homelands where the German BND and the Russian SWR are portrayed as simultaneously cooperating and fighting each other. And then, beside of the agents, we get some other characters that currently and frequently occur. First, the whistleblowers. In 5 of 6 shows, the whistleblowers are NSA employees, some still working there. Their motives differ strongly. Some of them follow their conscience by bringing the knowledge about surveillance to the surface. Others seem to be more interested in the public attention or financial profit. But all of them are chaste, and all of them are deeply afraid of the consequences of their actions. Then got there the journalists. Also, journalists are main characters when it comes to the topic of surveillance. They publish the informations and documents of the whistleblowers facing threats like examinations lasting for days, imprisonment, and accusation of high treason. In one show, even death. They are mostly portrayed as obligated to the truth and willing to resist high pressure in order to protect their sources. Some are even activists. And activists and hackers are the next special group, and the last one, that appears frequently often in the TV shows. They are the source of secret documents themselves, or helpers and protectors of whistleblowers. But some are also working for the system, also known as the secret agencies. Most of them are pictured as anarchistic, politically interested, a bit childish, but also very intelligent. Some are willing to break the law for good purpose or their personal gain. We also got a lot of other groups in these TV shows, like scientists who, by the majority, oppose the surveillance, or members of the legal or political system. Politicians occur both as the puppet masters of the NSA and as their monitored objects. We only found one example of public resistance against surveillance, and only in one show the perception of the population is represented. And it's represented like they are not interested at all.
So, now you see we did quite a lot and we watched a shitload of TV shows. And of course we would like to have the time to walk you through all of them. But, well, we all are tired at this time of day, so we only will walk you shortly through one of them and give you one very specific example. I would just shortly like to remind you that we were talking about the creation of collective memory and myth. And there is one sentence that has been written by Stuart Hall in response to the Russian philosopher Volosinov, who said, "The world has to be made to be mean." The world has to be made to mean. Well, the rest is also true, but not tonight. So popular culture can be a way to challenge ideological control, and it can be a way to maintain it. As we see back in the days before Snowden, usually secret services were depicted very positively, which changed dramatically. And that is also what our example comes through. I would like to talk to you shortly about the newsroom. Probably a lot of you know this show. There was one episode aired in 2012 already, so roughly 1.5 years before Snowden, where an NSA agent comes forward to the editor-in-chief of ACN, which is this network, and talks about how the NSA monitors 1.7 billion texts, emails, and phone calls of American citizens every single day, without a warrant and completely illegal. But what he doesn't do, which kind of does not really put him into the myth about whistleblowers, is that he does never present any sort of classified material. The only material he gives in an envelope to the editor-in-chief are absolutely open records from court cases, etc. Even though those information might be generally public, they are not easy to find for anyone, which makes his move kind of, well, whistleblower-ish. So the journalists, of course, want to get onto this topic. They really want to publish something about it, but they still have the fear of getting into the NSA's spotlight. Sadly enough, the newsroom more or less dropped the topic, but picked it up again in 2014, after Snowden, with a much more interesting couple of episodes in a season where this topic is highlighted tremendously. So basically what happens is that Neil, the IT guy, who said in the short video we've seen before that the NSA seems to have an awful lot of laws to protect itself from its citizens, he's the IT guy of ACN. And he gets contacted by a whistleblower who tells him, you know, give me your public encryption key, I would like to send you something. Oh, could you maybe, you know, get some stronger encryption? And then he sends him thousands of classified documents. On the one hand, the journalists of ACN, of course, want to do something with this material because it's highly sensitive stuff that is in there. It's all classified and not supposed to be there, which also brings others of the group to the point where they advocate for the idea of cooperating with the authorities on this issue. So it's very well shown how much a journalist has to fear repression by the government just for showing what was given to them. So what of course happens is a very Guardian-like story. The FBI gets to ACN with a search warrant, searches their hard drives, takes their documents, and just takes everything they can grab. But before that, the anchorman, who is the real hero of ACN, tells Neil to just run away, which he does, because he knows the name of the source. So he runs away and doesn't appear back on screen for a couple of episodes. But of course the story would be too positive if that would be it and they could just, you know, publish articles on it and everything would be fine. But sadly enough, the anchorman knows the name of the source as well. And then he decides not to tell the name to anyone. He's really pressured by courts, he's really pressured by these FBI people and some awful lawyers. But he's actually going into jail for quite a while, I'm not quite sure, something like 54 days. But interestingly enough, that's even not the whole story. At the same time, simultaneously, the newsroom depicts the real story of Edward Snowden as some sort of sidekick. You only see in very few scenes that two journalists, pretty young ones as well, are being sent to the airport where Snowden is, you know, living more or less by that time. And when they hear about the rumor that he will go into a plane, they even trade their own plane tickets that they have to go back home with a couple on their honeymoon. And, you know, they give them everything, like their watches and their clothes, just to get these tickets. But of course, again, it's a political drama series, so Snowden is not on the plane. He is, of course, back in the airport, as we all know.
So, last, we have some conclusions to make. The first is that the NSA scandal changed the way TV shows handle the topic of surveillance. The second is that Edward Snowden himself became a figure of pop culture, and that only when his name is dropped, everybody knows, okay, now it's about surveillance. And at last, we're historians as well, it seems that TV shows are working on the historization of an open case of the surveillance that actually happens today. Okay, thank you.
Well, one second, because we are historians, we have to show you our sources.
Oh, yes.
Which are there. And in case you know about any other TV show, I mean, we watched some from other countries than the US, just send it to my Twitter account or tell us after this talk, because we really, really are interested in how it's depicted in other countries. Thank you.
Yes.